Hi, everybody. It's me, Instructor Phil. It's late, I think busy day. I'm gonna try to crank out like a miniature rough thumbnail and demo for you real quick, talking a little bit about the swamp location. What's important to me when I look at the swamp is there are some key visual identifiers that tend to work well with the swamp. I've noticed in a lot of the reference work, they tend to have, let me show them to you. The swamp areas tend to have very large, thick rooted trees and curved root structure, which reminds me of an old production that I worked on called The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. We had these really big curving trees. So that's one aspect I noticed. Another aspect with swamps are these, like, again, these sort of veiny roots coming out. Hold on a minute. Right here. Another thing that I noticed, again, the same thing being repeated, this visual identifier of this very large root and massing shape, and then almost an overgrown jungle type of feel where the plants are hanging down or gravity sort of pulling the leaves down as they drop, and then branches just going in sort of random directions. So this really was giving me some really good ideas here. And then this one on the bottom here too, again, the same thing. The visual weight is pulling down these large angled trees, foreground, midground, background type of thing. So looking at some of this reference, now this is more like a river, but could be a swamp area too. I like the hills in there, the flowing shapes. It gives me a couple ideas of maybe trying something different. And one of the hard things to do that I can't do with from a linear composition is that I don't have reflective water, which is indicative of a swamp having lots of water in it. So I have to look at these other elements and try to figure out what I can bring together and what I can't. Okay. Armand Serrano's piece here, this nice curvy piece of wood that fits in there. Okay. So I think step number one in anything that you do is always have to look at that information and become a little bit more familiar with your subject matter. The way that you draw and work will always be sort of predicated and based upon the way that you interpret reference in your reference material. Okay. So I guess what I'm thinking about doing here, what's sort of floating in my mind is I really like this sense of, I want to have a horizon line about there. And I immediately just want angles in there. I want curve and flowing shapes. It's funny, I started doing this and I start thinking immediately of working. I need to try to find these layouts that we did for The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I have them tucked away somewhere in a box, and I'm just trying to find them. I don't know where sort of to look, so I have to go digging through my studio. So I'm going to just start sketching for a little bit. These are, I'm imagining these roots, very large, like roots coming down, branching off into waterways. sort of looking up at some different reference, just trying to get a flow. What I should have done, being your teacher, I should have done little thumbnails first and before diving into a large composition. But of course, Phil didn't do that. I'm going to try to draw live for you and come up with some other ideas. Which, if I would have sat and maybe thought about composing some other variations, I might have had some other outcomes that might be a little bit easier in terms of ideation. That's okay. Love to draw, so if I can get into it, and then try to dive in and see what I come up with. I need to have a large body of water that's very identifiable, that can be identified easily as being water. So what I'm thinking is that this here to here needs to be a large body of water. Imagining some type of funky rocks popping up through the water at different places. Work on that in a minute. I want to have scale moving back. So I was imagining all of this here needs to be water. I want to try to get some line, some movement for these shapes. Being water and this large sort of overgrown tree branch nub growing into it, if that makes sense. Right, so I like this movement. I'm trying to get a little bit in there. Ideas come through my head. I sort of wanted another large element coming through there, but a couple ideas. One is a landmass back here. And that landmass might have other related trees. Zooming around. I also had this idea too, which was another large. Let me see if I can draw this in the right circumference, circles. That's going into like maybe dirt, and then it might overlap some of this. So I'm going to stop right there for a minute. Do you see how I have these large curvy shapes? These are my visual identifiers that communicate these large growing arms and elements that go into the swamp. I'm thinking these need to be my largest shape collections that I have. Maybe one more. I'm thinking back here. then everything else needs to drop in size relationship to come to small plants growing and wrapping over these large trees with then gravity pulling them down. That's sort of what my idea is, and that's the direction that I'm going. So let me continue back in here and see what I come up with. I will admit I'm a little tired. So I feel like I could goof this up very easily, but I'm just going to keep plugging away. I think it's, you know, you want to try to get something out, maybe at least. Contour line is your friend, right? Need to go a size smaller. I'm drawing and like lines aren't coming out. It's annoying me a little bit. All right. Okay. Then I'm going to go from here and I want to start working on and addressing some clumps and groupings in the foreground that are, by the way, I'm working all on one layer. which might have been a little bit of a mistake, but that's what happens when you're doing a demo at 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so what I want to do is dress up. I want to leave everything else in the back to be very light lined. And then I want to dress up everything in the foreground to be extremely, what I would call visual heavy. And I already have some ideas for plants and stuff that I want to do. So here's an idea that I had. I'm going to start to overlay this in. I want a vine that wraps from here, comes down into my element, and wraps over part of this. Off of my vine, I want there to be these long sort of limbs, and then these long limbs, excuse me, I should be a little bit more, are going to be like a sort of a flared up top like that on them. I want that silhouette reed to pop very nicely in my work. Sorry, let me save my work real quick. Photoshop gets a little buggy sometimes with what I'm doing. So let me just save to my desktop really quick. We'll call this Phil's Swamp Demo 1. Desktop save. All right, cool. I'm drawing and no lines are coming out of my work. It's a little frustrating. Right. I want to add a little bit more in here. Doing that thing again where I'm drawing and no lines are coming out. That's our wonderful Zoom recorder eating up all of our memory. Back here, I want to address what I did over here with these sort of straight edged leaves back on this side. Just double check what I did there. Come on, Photoshop, give me a line. I don't know if you guys see that my cursor is going and there's no lines coming out. I know it's not the computer, custom built computer with 128 gigs of RAM in it. That's not going to be slowing it whatsoever. Sorry, I don't like that. I'm taking it out. right? Should really be able to see that water wrapping around. Feel that movement of it hitting. I'm going to reframe my composition a little bit. I like that. Rock and stuff, I want to bring it out to about there. All right. There's one more swampy element I want in there, one or two. I want a huge, like, I don't know what the hell I call it, like a large leg of a tree or a vine with moss hanging from it. Where I'm thinking it would be best would be maybe if it was somewhere propped in like here. But I got to be careful I don't hit a weird tangency with my other little vines, or I like those vines. Maybe it sort of swerves in there a little bit. Might have to redo this leaf. That's okay. I'm not liking that, so I'm going to change it. Give me a minute. I don't like what I did there, so I'm going to modify it a little bit more. What I'm going to do, always forget, I'm drawing on one layer. It's late, long day, teaching, meetings. I'm not functioning on all cylinders right now. This is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and just say, screw it. Try to get something in there that I like, but I have it on another layer. Then I can adjust it. I'm going to try to go thick and thin at parts. Voila. Aha. The benefit of having something on another layer. Flip it to where I want it to be. Down a little bit. So it's hitting these little tangencies. I like it there, out there. So what I'm going to do is, I guess I'll leave it for now. I sort of don't need that leaf. I can get rid of that leaf, but, or what I could do is this, extend the leaf, overlap the shape a little bit more. Let me erase the overlap that I have right in there. Now I'm going to merge these layers together. So I'm back sketching on one layer. So it overlaps it a little bit. That's all right, I guess. And let's get a little moss hanging down there. It's so much easier to do moss if you have a good brush. I have a good brush for doing moss that I made and sort of tweaked a little bit. It works really good. A little harder when you're drawing it, trying to get those little pieces of line and gunk. All right, okay, cool. I like that. My little moss in the back. Okay. All right. There's still some things I want to throw in this. I think they're important for foreground. I want to overlap, and then I wanted to keep the background here on a separate layer. Hold on a minute. Got one of these weird lines in there. The background to me would be just a nice silhouette of like a tree or fallen trees or other elements. There would be a backdrop that would be a lot lighter. So I'm going to do that with like a really thin line. And then I'm going to come in here and try to overlap some other little elements here and in the foreground. Okay. One of the things I'm thinking about doing right in the foreground is sort of a straight edged organic round plant that has cuts in it. I don't know the exact name of it, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it in here and get it to fit. I'm going to make them very large. Hopefully they work, so keep your fingers crossed. So what I'm going to do is a straight line with then rounded edges, and it'll look something like this. It'll be a, so I'll throw a couple lines in first. You're going to have one come out this way, like that. And then I'll have a big round edge like that. So I'm going to get rid of all that. I'm just going to erase that from my drawing. This is what I was thinking about. I've seen these plants before. I don't know what they're called. It's like literally a straight edge. Almost like there's a point to it. Then this part sort of falls down with gravity. And you get this sort of chopped look. It's quite cool. Sort of like that. That's only one leaf, right? So now we got to get a whole bunch more in there. Like that. Like that a lot. It overlaps, has a good feel, has a nice visual weight to it. I'm going to do another one again. Straight line, boom, right through there. A little bit smaller this time. Curve down. Just come off this edge here. There's that straight line. Bring it back. Then a little bit of a tangency there. I'm going to try to cheat it very lightly. Like that quite a bit. Got to have a third in there, right? Thinking the third one. Like that little curve to overlap it. Be a little smaller. Okay. I'm, excuse me, my throat has been losing my voice all week and it's getting worse. What's happening here, my real big goal on this left-hand corner was to have overlap on top of overlap on top of overlap. To me, that was really key. If you remember, I had that one arm, the one that was here coming down, that overlaps that, that overlaps that, this overlaps that, and then this now overlaps that. So there's a whole bunch of what I call goodness and overlap between foreground, midground into the background. It's going to really help me create some of that spatial depth that I want. And then over here, I like what's happening there too. I do like these leaves in there. I feel like I want to add another one of these leaves or two over here. And I think I could tuck them in right here on the side in between this rock. I'm going to try to do that. Might have a long one break that line right there, curve down like this. So I'm going to come back here. Oops, obviously not in red. That's pretty cool. I don't like that lip up there. Let me erase that and get that fixed. All right, that's working for me. And I want to have another one curl. So I'm breaking my art direction now. I don't want to do that. Let's actually, no curl, straight end, up, smaller, straight, a little point, have a sag, gravity, pulls that down a little bit. that. And maybe I want to have one more here. A small one coming up a little. This is straight. Curve. There with the rock. Okay. All right. So I like what I have. I feel like I have that swampy feel in it right now. But I have to wrap it up because I have to go to bed in 10 minutes. So I wanted to put a rock or two to create movement and direction, and I wanted to address the land masses. So what I mean by the land mass, I have the land back here and just these ends hitting in it, but I don't have any lines, contour lines, and nothing wrapping over it, showing other form or change. Rocks breaking the flow of the line. There's rocks everywhere. The whole planet we live on is a rock, right? You're gonna have lots of rocks tied into little places, breaking a shoreline or two. Right? I like this idea of the rocks here. One of my thoughts was popping rocks out of the water too a little bit. Hold on, I need to find this a little bit. Then I'll do this in a minute. I want to hang something on there. Like vines and goodies wrapping around, adhering to the form and the shape of that object, going around the side. And then maybe on that, there's like, a little bit of another viney thing. Alrighty. And then that water fuel the flow, right? The water is gonna curve this way, maybe bend a little bit. It's easy in Photoshop to show water, just make it dark with a reflection. It's a little bit harder from a linear basis. Try to make sure that water has movement and flow in it, right? I like this rock coming up. That was sort of fun. Always do that. Thanks to Michael Spooner. Something I learned from working with Michael, being around him, watching him sketch and draw. Right. And then, because if I have one there, I can use repetition of transfer of scale and perspective to have maybe another one like back here, let's say. So there's another little rock formation in the back. And then maybe when we get back here, I have another little one by the shore. Just helps a little bit. Okay, let's wrap it up. Last final details. I have different ideas in my brain for what's in the backpack right here. So, oops, hit save there, real quick there. So it has that swampy feel. I like what's in there. Here are a couple of different ideas I had for the back. One was a bunch of angled trees, enhancing a U style composition in the back. So I'm going to try to go with outline only. I was thinking of something like this with big bases, leaves, but I want to try to just get the silhouette in there only. That's the hard part. So let me just try it real quick. There might be negative spaces. And drop my brush down a little bit and just go with it. Oops, I broke my rhythm there. What I was going for was rounded tops, straight bottoms with branches. A bit of a tangency there. I'm going to try to cheat it. it's hard to see is a line, but I'm imagining it just a shape with like little cutouts, if that makes sense. Where you can see like holes and branches and stuff, overlay shapes. Just like filler, basically. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to take a quick break, be right back, and then I'm going to throw in a couple tones just to separate foreground, midground, and background really as fast as I can. So I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I just took a little break, came back. I went ahead to save some time in terms of uploading time for this demo, and I put a little bit of tone on it very quickly. And here's the layer that I put on there, just to separate things out a little bit, to break it. So that's it. That's my demo. That's a swamp sketch. Try to keep it in that 25-minute range, just loose, fun. I would recommend a couple thumbnails first, a couple of visual identifiers. Start out with something that's key for your read and your location. Think about the plants, maybe sketch those beforehand, then bring it all together. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. See you in class tomorrow. Good night.